Hi, welcome. Thank you for attending. I know it's late in the day after a long first day of VMware, so very grateful you're here. I want to introduce to you a story about what we did with a large retail customer deploying vSAN across their estate into the retail locations and how we kind of did that with automation. I'm Nigel Venables. I'm the VMware Technical Account Manager for this customer. Unfortunately, my colleague Simon Todd, who was due to present with me, can't be here today. Unfortunately, he's ill. But I'd like to welcome on stage Rishi, who's from the customer, who let him introduce himself.
Hi.
Share a little bit about himself.
Hi. Thanks, Nigel. Hi, everyone. I'm Rishi. I work as a VMware systems engineer for one of the retail companies. Today we'll be going through a slide of deploying vSANs to 3,000 stores in 2 weeks. And it's not just about technical, but about the user story, how we planned and engaged VMware and ended up with having a robust IT solution for our edge compute platform. So do you want to take on the agenda?
2 seconds. I just want to slip through quickly the agenda. Obviously, we're going to talk about the customer Rishi back in a second. He'll talk through some of the challenges and why we went down this route of building this new environment for them. Design, what, why, and how we did it. Obviously, we'll talk about some of the challenges. Quite a big chunk is around the deployment, where we automated and what we did in those steps. Where we had some challenges in that, we'll be open and talk about those. How we did it, what tools, what people we engage with, lessons learned. This is a live environment, so what we're looking to do going forward, right? What's the next things, and where it is now, and again, like I say, what's the next steps that these guys are looking at to do. So, yeah, I'll let you step forward. You can talk a little bit about who you are. Go. And I can jump off the stage.
Yep. So we are one of the largest retail companies in the world. So we come within the top five retail companies. And this is what it says. Unfortunately, I'm not able to disclose the organization name at this point of time. Sorry for that. But probably from the slides, you'll be able to make it up. And this is what we are at the moment. And we are doing a shopping business. And it's a grocery business and a retailing company. And there will be around 80 million shopping transactions happening over a week. And we have around 7,000 physical endpoints across the globe where people come and trade with us, also online as well. And on the workforce front, we are 450,000 employees. So that gives an overview of how huge our environment is and what sort of IT should be there in the background to support that infrastructure and all those things. So, we were looking around, as you know, IT has changed a lot in a couple of years, and how people test the trading has also changed a lot. It has a huge impact on IT systems, and we have to be prepared ourselves to give our customers the better experience. By the time we reached there, our existing platforms at edge locations were kind of age platform, old technologies, which really needed to change. Our application teams were not able to help with the applications to deploy onto that, or whenever a new application comes in, we had to deploy new servers into the environment, so the footprint was growing, so a lot of challenges around that. As such, we have engaged with VMware at that time. Anyways, virtualization was one of the key options everyone stood up for, including our CTO, which gives the opportunity for app guys as well as us to take the platform to the next level, also to scale up and implement the new solutions that comes across the line. So this is what it is. Nigel, do you want to take over?
Yeah, it's fine. So what did we do? So obviously, we based it on a VMware platform, otherwise we wouldn't be here. The idea was about consolidation, reducing the footprint in a store and making it standardized. So we're standardizing on a standard vSphere platform. Because it's vSAN, we have a 3-node cluster concept, so give us that fault tolerance of =1. I'll discuss it now. I mean, obviously, some people think, why not a remote witness for this? When we were looking at the scale, the number of remote witnesses was quite considerable. The retailer wanted to make sure that each store was its own sort of fault tolerance domain, so they weren't relying on the network links out, each store. And it gave them more capacity and scope for expansion in that store by having all the hardware in that place. So that's why we've got a sort of 3-node solution rather than a 2-node with a remote witness. Obviously, it's based on a vSAN, which gives us that ability to, any VM, any container kind of platform. So yeah, it gives us vSAN storage. What does that give us? It gives availability. So we can start doing FTT = 1 in that environment. So, if we lose a host, we can carry on working. And down the line, we can start to introduce new services as they come online with Robo. Things like DR with vSAN backup coming out, encryption, technologies like that which are being introduced into vSAN. So, we've got a platform that we can grow as well. So trying to simplify it, moving it to a single management console. One thing we wanted is, to do everything in the vSphere client. They could have had an external storage array. That's another management tool you've got to look after. So everything was in the vSAN client. And, we can build a VM and then we can transpose it, can move it anywhere. It's an object, then we can, build it in the data center, copy it out. It's fully movable. And the keys to all this really was the repeatability. So can we take this design and move it to every other store? And that was the answer, yes, we could. So we've got a platform that an engineer can take, and we know what exactly it is in every store. It's fully repeatable. It's a true blueprint. Some of the design challenges, though. So the background to this is obviously the retailer engaged with VMware PSO to help them design and build this. But they also had, they don't distribute hardware to all their stores, right? They have a third party who manages that. That's not their business. So, they were involved then in how we push out the hardware to those environments. They would be provisioning the kit in a factory with no connectivity back to the customer's data center. So it had to be kind of a first stage offline build, but enough that we could then, once it's in a store, we could start to connect to it. And we'll sort of see that journey come through in a bit. So that's the first thing. We had to be able to build it offline to a state that we could manage it when it was in a store. Site variables, there were surveys done of each site. Not every site's exactly the same. Some have got full racks, some have got smaller racks. What's the power like in each environment? What's the networking like? Every store's ever so slightly different. Field engineers, so the guys that were going out doing this, they're not VMware engineers, they're kind of break-fix people who will just be responsible for racking and stacking and cabling up the servers. We weren't expecting them to have any VMware skills, so the process had to make sure that they weren't involved in it. In-store networking, again, so doing our surveys, we discovered that quite common, the issue was availability of network ports. So without the expense of buying new network switches, what was our solution to this? And we'll kind of go through that in a second. And working with the customer, it's using tools that we're all familiar with, whether it's scripting tools, VRO, vCenter, those kind of technologies. So what do we do? Like I say, it's a 3-node vSAN cluster, and quite simply, altogether, it's one big disk group. It's hybrid, so it's just there's no all flash in here. But like I said, the earliest challenge was around the network capability in a store. So we were lucky that the retailer had just gone through a big network refresh, so we were able to use that capability of the new switches they had, which allowed us to install 10 gig modules into each store switch. This gave us the ability to have 10 gig networking to support the VMware environment, though there was only ability to have up to 4 ports, but we had a single uplink from each host, so we've got 3 hosts. I have to say, that you're a bit of, not very fault tolerant, but I have to say that's probably been the bit that hasn't, we've not seen any failures in that area, so it's worked out really well. Obviously, we've got a lot of traffic, got vSAN, vMotion, VM traffic on there. So we're using network I/O control in the data center, vCenter, to use shares when we're starting to see contention on that environment, if we ever do. I don't think we've ever really been in that case, but they're there monitoring it all the time at the DV switch level. So the original scope for this was to build out to up to 9,000 hosts. So how do you sort of manage that much environment in your data center? 9,000 hosts remotely is quite a lot. And also then we also had to build out, a proper route to live environment. So that, we're not going to roll out something into a live store that's trading and realize it breaks it, because we've just pushed that to 1,000 stores. Whoops. It's not a good day. So we had to build out a number of things. We built this idea of a concept of a pod, which is a self-contained set of services that hosted a number of stores. So we had a scalable number. So we could scale up, scale down, depending on how the environment was going. So the first one is an operational testing pod. So this is where the retailer has an environment where they have X number of mock-up stores. They've got all the technology that would be in that store, whether it's a petrol pump or a till or a scan as your shop or all those kind of technologies. So each pod contains, so this pod would contain a couple of vCenters in a single sign-on domain. I mean, it seems a bit overkill, right, for what we're doing, but because when we're trying to scale out to the larger ones and we're trying to get to bigger numbers, we need enhanced link mode to kind of minimize the number of management points. So we want to replicate that all the way back down into route to live. So we don't really need 2 vCenters for this scale, but it gives us that route to live model. Each environment has a VRO. So again, we can test code here, and we're not touching production environments. We can do it here. It's proper route to live. Remote collectors, 2 of those. I suppose that's the only place where we sort of share infrastructure. So each pod will have remote collectors, but we've got one large analytics cluster that's analyzing everything. Because we're not making changes through VROPs that's going to affect a live store, we can sort of share that layer of infrastructure, really. Hardware tools. So again, each pod has their own hardware vendor management tools, for whatever servers that are being deployed. Again, separate here so that we can push out BIOS firmware changes here again in an ops test environment without touching production accidentally. So this kind of environment is scaled for 65 stores. So next, pilot stores. So this is a smaller subset of trading stores where they will make changes. They're closely monitored, so they've taken things through ops tests. It's worked. Let's move it into a real store, make sure the same things happen. And then this can be for the applications that are running on the VMs inside this, as well as infrastructure changes as well, right? So we're just full end to end. And again, it's just the same model. We've got separate services across the way, including VRO. Finally, we're scaling out up to like 1,000 stores per pod. So this is now the full production environment. So it could go up to 9,000 hosts. And we'll look at these numbers. These were based on 6.5 GA. So some numbers have changed now. We've got some changes in configuration maximums if you go into later versions, but this is where we based our numbers on. And conservative, well below config maximums. Thinking of maximums per link mode is 4,000. We were like, well, we'll have 3,000 hosts because we're in a robo, we're not in a data center. It's more management overhead. So as you can see, it's exactly the same model, but it's a scalable model, so we know that one pod will do 1,000 stores, and we can just build another one if they bought another retailer and wanted to do the same thing or wanted to extend it to another country. The only bit these guys share is a single VRO instance, because then that way we don't have multiple we have to manage and control. So they just share that, so we can point when we do production deployment across all of them. So that's kind of the data center design. How we did the automation. So it's kind of split into a few parts really because of the offline build and different team dependencies. We'll kind of step through it and we'll talk through some of it. So how do we do it? So as I said earlier on, the retailer's got a third party they work with extensively who manages the hardware distribution to a store and will also help manage the life cycle of that, hardware replacements, etc. And they've centralized the collecting of all the hardware into their warehouse so that they can build it. So they're going to basically get a store manifest. We're going to build this one today. They'll unpack it. And the retailer, the customer, actually built their own USB keys. So they had some great skills internally to be able to build like a pre-built bootable WinPE environment key. Okay, so that would all these guys did. So as an engineer, I'm in the warehouse. I've got my bootable USB key. I just put it into one of the 3 servers that I'm building. When it boots up a little mini script that says, which host are you building? Oh, I'm building host 1 today. And which store number? And I'll say, I'm building store number 2000. And that will then allow the key to map the IP address, the DNS name, and everything that goes with that store. So they can suddenly that's all they need to do now. They're ready to go. We can do a memory test from that key, just to make sure we're sort of checking it. Added because the customer's like, well, one of the big failures we've seen quite common with hardware in the data center is memory. I have to say, I don't think it's been one of the big failures now with this hardware. Obviously, memory's getting better as well. So it was in there. So when they're running that key, once they've done a memory test, the next bit is they're using the hardware management tools. And those tools will then configure BIOS settings to a agreed standard. We'll configure ILO, setting a sort of default password, which we change later. We'll talk about that in a bit. And also we're setting up the HBA, clearing that out, making sure we can do the vSAN steps down the line. And that's using the native sort of hardware management tools, command line tools. And then finally, we run a kickstart script. And on that key, that kickstart script will boot up. It'll pre-populate with a management IP address, a host name, and that's all we need. So all we do, that's it. So once that's been done, ESX is installed. The engineers in that factory have seen it's got to the end screen. They power it off, and they're going to be putting it back in a box. We don't do anything else now because we've got no connectivity to a data center. So they're ready now. So that store is ready to go to a customer site. So they'll take it to the store. There are 3 nodes that have been built by one of their colleagues. They'll unpack it, they'll rack it, they'll stack it, they'll obviously put it in there. They'll then be adding the 10 gig modules to the switches to support our network connectivity. This gives us our VMware services network connectivity. We also have ILO, which is 1 gig around the front. They'll be cabling that up. And all they're looking for is, do I see a green light kind of thing? Have I been able to cable it up correctly? Have I managed to get the cables in? Does everything come up okay? They're not taking a keyboard, a mouse, a console with them. They're kind of just relying on the visual signs that they see. It's worked pretty well, I would say. We're just trying to make it as simple as possible for them, so they don't need a lot of skills. And they can go quickly as well. So we're doing, you're doing 1,000 stores, you've got to move quick. They'll obviously as well be contacting the network team to say, right, guys, we've put in the modules. You can now configure the switch with the correct network config. Pretty scripted as well from the network team. They would just go, right, okay, you've done store 2,000. We're now going to just push down the right config for the switch ports because everything's exactly the same. So yeah, and then once they're all done and they've got confirmation that it's all worked and they've got their green lights, they'll be out the store. Okay, we don't know whether ESX is booted or not. We just know it's powered on. All the disks are spinning, right? It's like that. So what happens next? So now it's back over to the customer's team. The customer wants to obviously put it into their hardware management tool so they can start, managing the hardware from a firmware or a BIOS level, right? So the first thing they do is they'll run some basic connectivity tests. They'll be told, the third party will have told them these stores we did this week, these ones are ready to go. They'll give them that list. So they can then start testing them. So all they're basically doing is, can I see the ILO on that server? That's what they're doing at this point. And if it is, they continue. If not, then the error. And we have to go back to the third party and try and investigate why, what's going on, speak to the switch team. So they will then, so if they see it, so it's fully automated. So they'll run, they'll say we're doing store 2000 to 2020, and the script will run through each of those stores, look for it, make sure that it can see them all. If it can see all 3 hosts in a store, then it runs through the next scripts, which has had them to their correct management portal. We're looking at the management tools for some of the vendors. We had to have some logic in there because to make sure they went to the right pod as well, so they match with vCenter, because this is sometimes we talk about scale and it's not just VMware products. The tools we're talking about here, they'd only scale to 500 hosts. So when we're building 3,000 hosts in a pod for 1,000 stores, you've got to have 6. And then you've got to have 18 for a full production deployment. So we have some logic in there that says this host goes in this pod. We know that these management servers are in there. So that we know that everything is contained within one pod, one vCenter, one management tooling. Once they're done, they're happy. Cool, we've done. We can talk to the host. We can actually, if we can talk to the ILO, we can actually do quite a lot of diagnostics from back in the office now rather than having to send an engineer if we've got a problem down the line. So we're ready for the vSphere build out. What are we doing? So this was done with VRO. So I don't know if everyone's used VRO, highly flexible tool, can do a lot. It's got a lot of pre-built functions and workflows and steps that you can use. And we kind of built on those to build this out. And we'll sort of step through what we did. It was made quite modular as well. So each bit we talk about is its own little workflow so that if it breaks in the middle, we can come back and have a look at it. Or we can take bits out for a different kind of deployment and reuse it if they change the model or change, like going down to a single host or something in a different model of store. So to make that pretty common and easy to run, we run a first workflow. That first workflow is all about setting up the environment, setting our variables. And to help us do that, we had two things. We had a CSV file which contained all the details of all the stores. Had a store number, what subnet that mapped to, what name we would put for the data store, the cluster. Those kind of things were in that file. And also in that file was whether a store was ready to be built or not built or errored, so we could sort of track within that file where we were in the build process. And we'll touch on that when we talk about the build process. The second part was a host customization answer file. So we took advantage of the new 6.5 host profile features, where you can pre-populate an answer file for your variables that host profiles will ask for, things like your IP addresses when you're setting up a VMK network, it'll ask you for those details. So we could pre-populate that information inside that file, and then we could call on it when we needed it during the scripting. One thing here you'll see as well, we talk about an automated rollout. We did have a piece of coding here that allowed us to actually basically auto look for a store as it came on the network. We could be scanning all the time for all the IP addresses of all the stores as they came online. In the end, decided not to do it, though it was in there. And it was totally possible. It could be totally automated, and as a store appeared, we could start building it. Customer wanted a little bit more control over what they were doing. We don't want to be out port scanning 1,000 stores as well. So, that's kind of, it was there, not used, but you could have truly been automated and hands off once this was plugged into a store. As soon as the engineer left, we could have been building it. And the other thing we found, which was kind of where our testing came in, that you run it in a lab in a nice local environment. When you run stuff, it runs really quick and it's beautiful. What we found that when you're doing it remotely, you've got to add time delays in sometimes just for vCenter services to catch up or ESX to understand what's going on and those changes to be fully recognized. So to make it run more smoothly, we just added in a sort of functional delay into some of the scripting steps just to kind of help do that. So again, we're setting more variables. What are the license key we're looking for? So we can set one defined license key name for the vSAN. When it came to ESX host licensing, we don't include this here because what we did, we took advantage of the auto-deploy bulk licensing feature. So you can preload your license key inside vCenter, which is a feature of auto-deploy, so that when a host appears in vCenter, it's auto-licensed with that license key. So we kind of, even though we're not using auto-deploy, we took that technology and used it here, which meant that we didn't have to worry about adding an ESX host license as part of this process. As soon as it was added in the workflow, it got a license key that we wanted. Again, just another step, we're adding a little bit of delay. Standard root password, so the kickstart sets the root password. We do change it later in the host profile, so it's not the same as the USB key. Network migration. So this is where we're talking about how we're migrating the sort of standard switch onto a DV switch. We'll touch a little bit, I'll come back to this, but we had some little challenges around how host profiles manage single uplinks. Email settings, so I mean, this is really key. So you're trying to be hands off as much as possible, but you want to know when something goes wrong, right? Because you don't want to be watching it all the time. So this would basically send an email to the defined person, me, at this point, and it'd be telling us, what failed, what store number, and where it failed. So each of the workflows, when we step through them in a minute, you'll see that there's like an email error alert section. So we can stop, we know what's gone wrong, we can send the email to the administrator and they can step in and try and figure it out. So again, we've got the functionality in the workflow as well to define a baseline and push out vSphere updates. In this case, we were doing it for a HPA update to the software. Tagging, so to identify the different store types. So we tag, whether it's a petrol station, a hypermarket, a small one in your corner shop, And this becomes quite useful when we're looking at VROPs. So we can start doing dashboarding and work in VROPs based on those taggings we create. So we can create custom groups based on the tag. We then haven't got to edit it. So if you've done VROPs, you can create dynamic groups. So as soon as something appears with the correct tag of hypermarket, you will automatically get added to that group. So it's in that dashboard, it's in that report. You haven't got to worry about it being added in later. So it's kind of where that is really useful. Host connectivity. So like the guys who are doing the ILO and the hardware management, we want to check we can CSX before we start. So this is where we're kind of just defining what we do. We're getting VRO to go out and check it can SSH, not SSH, sorry, I apologize. Check on port 902 that ESX is up. Just because that's the most reliable way of seeing if ESX is up. If 902 is up, we know that most of the services have started on ESX. If we don't see that, we can presume that the host are going to be alive at all to help us manage it. So VRO is doing that for us from inside there. And the other one, not really going to talk about, but we did have a step where we were investigating how we could clone from a USB key, a VM, so that we didn't have to push down images over the WAN. Not something we actually did in the end, but it's just in there as a kind of, we can turn it on and off as well, so can make it flexible. And sort of prior to starting all this work, obviously we worked with the customer to pre-populate all the DNS and to pre-populate all the firewall walls. So these are the prereqs that we put in place, but pretty simple really, once we're there. So what we're doing for the workflow. So the workflow kicks off. So when I said earlier on, we've got this resource element, a file in VRO, CSV file that has a status of each store and like store details. As part of that line in that store, it says, it's column, it's called built, and it'll say, yes, I'm built, I'm ready to be built, errored, in progress. So that's how we can track where we are in the progress. The original plan was to have everything set at a ready to be built status, and once it was found by automatically scanning, we would just be changing the status in that file via the workflows automatically to an in progress and then to a built, never to errored, hopefully. But because we decided to go manually, we set everything to turn off the automatic scanning. We just had to set everything in that resource element to be built so that we had to manually set it to be a ready state. So all the administrator had to do was a little workflow. They just type in the store number, and it would just change that CSV element, that flag in that file. Then I'm going to go in and edit that file. We've got a little workflow that does it for them already. And they could do a number of stores that way. So, we could do 20, 30 stores, all set them to ready. And then once they've done that step, they've taken the report, they've set all the stores to ready to be built that they know. All they've got to do is then click on the button to start store deployment. They don't have any other options now. We've done all the prereqs earlier on. We've set it ready to go. So we're not asking them to pre-populate any more information. We've got everything we need, either in that CSV file or in our prereqs. So the first thing we do as that part of that process is we'll go and check that we can talk to all the hosts. 902, make sure that the services are up. We can see ESXi. That's great. If you can see that, we can do multiple stores as well. So, this workflow will run through multiple stores simultaneously. So we check, if you see 902 on 3 hosts, that store's ready to go. If at least one of them fails, we'll drop that store out and error out to the administrator and alert. So we've seen we can find all those stores, right? So we're now ready to go. We're ready to build our store. So the next step is quite simple. We've got to start creating a cluster to put our store into. So we're going into our resource element, find out which of the 10 vCenters we've got to point at, depending on which environment we're in. So it'll go and find that out, that file, based on the store number that we've had in our resource element. We've told it that's the store we want to build today. So it'll go and find that vCenter, start creating the cluster. Then it'll know, I know these 3 hosts are the ones I want to build out. So it starts adding those hosts to the cluster. Like I said earlier on, we've then no need to assign a license. We're already pre-doing that via also deploy commands. So it's quite simple. That's probably one of the simplest bits we do, is just quickly add host to a cluster. Next step, obviously when they're built with a standard management switch. We need to get them on a DV switch so we can start doing network I/O control. We've got centralized one switch instead of 3,000 switches. It's got to be easier to manage that way, that's why we do it. What we discovered though during the testing is that if you do it with a host profile and you've only got one uplink, it drops the gateway. Product feature. So that means obviously your host just disappears off the network and never comes back because it can't reform itself because it doesn't know where it is. It's normally a feature because you've only got one uplink. It's just the way they work. I suppose we're a bit of a corner case. Not many places would have one uplink for the management switch. So, you know. We actually found you could do it in PowerShell. So it was quite cool. So doing the same thing in PowerShell worked quite well. But this is where we used VRO. We had the command, the PowerShell scripting inside VRO. And using the variables we were passing from the workflow, we then passed that onto a PowerShell Windows host. It's just another VM site in the same management environment that we just ran that script on against that host. And that quickly migrated the switch. And you know, because VRO is in control, it can see when it's finished, and it can see when vSAN has reported that that task is done, so then we can continue. You know, so we're showing that, you know, even in VRO, you can call out to other things and start using it that way. You know, really flexible tooling. Next, obviously, apply host profile. So we've done the bit that didn't work. Now we can do the next bit that does work. So we're starting to look for the host names. We're going to get our host profiles. We're looking for the guest customization files for that store as well from our answer file that we pre-populated. And that's quite interesting, that pre-populated file is, if you do export it out and try and edit it, be very careful because it's really particular about the text format that you use. Don't do it in Notepad. You've got to do Notepad++ and save it in exactly the right format. Otherwise it doesn't work, as we learn. So as you can see here, again, I mean, I talked earlier on about create error objects. So this is where we're sending an email to the administrator if something fails at this point. We just break it out. I mean, it's quite small, but I think it's quite big on this screen. It kind of is what we're doing. So we're going through, we're getting the host profile for that host, which is part of the resource element config file. We put them in maintenance mode. We're starting to apply a host profile. If we need any host customizations, which we did for vMotion and vSAN networking, we did that. And then we basically exit maintenance mode. Job done. Host profile is quite simple. There's not too much in it. We're just setting a few security settings, some stuff like NTP. We'll also change the root password because obviously we set it with a kickstart script that anyone can read. So we want to make sure that nobody can read it, only the administrators know what it is. So we actually do that in the host profile as well. So we are changing it back there. Again, we've got a step. So we've enabled the VM kernel port on the vSAN, but we found another feature of host profiles. Everyone's favorite. That actually didn't enable the vSAN traffic type for the VM kernel port. When you enable, you say this is going to be a VM kernel port on my DV switch, create it for me in the host profile. What it didn't do is tick the little box that says this is for vSAN traffic. Luckily, you can kind of call that out in vCenter and just do it quickly. But yeah, it's an interesting one to watch. Quite a simple thing. Again, we've got a lot of weight in here because we found this sometimes took a little bit of time just to take effect on all the servers in a cluster. And the next bit, and there's a few steps in here, but they're all kind of building up to the same thing, right? So this is where we're starting to enable vSAN. Because we were on 6.5, we could use the ability to auto-claim all the disks, which you can't anymore, obviously, because in 6.5 update 1, they said, well, you know, you've got to select which ones are your cache and which ones aren't your cache. We could auto-claim all the disks, and we knew which ones were the SSDs and stuff. And for some reason, we still call it vCloud distributed storage in VRO, which annoys Simon if he's here, but he's not. I like winding him up about it. One day, we'll tell the product team one day. So yeah, what we're doing is just enable vSAN, which is, you know, auto-claim all the disks. We're kind of just adding a bit of waiting in here, just waiting for vSAN. We're getting our vSAN license key that we had in our variable at the beginning, applying that, so we're now licensed for vSAN. Obviously, we've got our cluster. We're building vSAN, you can't have HA enabled, so we're now starting to enable HA in that cluster once we've built all the vSAN bit. You know, as part of that creation as well, we do set down some, when we're doing all these steps, kind of in here, but we do set a couple of variables, you know, like ignore management redundancy, because we've only got a single uplink, so we need to include that as well as an advanced setting inside the cluster, and we're doing that here. We rename the data store just so it doesn't have like a long vSAN name. It's like vSAN data store, it creates it by default. That's not very useful when you've got 1,000 of them. You want to be able to say it's store number X. You know, when we did this, every host, every cluster, every vSAN had the same kind of country ID, store number, and then whether it's a host or a data store, etc. So we could quickly identify it, not the name of the town or the place, because for a lot of the operations guys who are offshore, that doesn't really mean a lot to them, right? They don't know where Peterborough is. Well, a lot of them do, but I sometimes wonder. So yeah, so HA, advanced HA properties, rename the data store. As I said earlier on, we do some tagging. So we're using, in our resource element file, we've got what each store type is, and we assign that tag so we can use it in VROPs down the line. And also, if you want to do any security grouping or anything in vSAN. Finally, the last step is we remediate the baseline. So we've got our cluster built. We can then start remediating against one single baseline. In this case, it was just a single HBA software driver update, but it could have been anything in there as well. We could have extended it further, but that's all it was. So, and once that's done, obviously the host reboot. That's it. We're job done, and we'll send a success email out to the administrators saying, "Store 2000 has been built today. Done. Finished. Thank you very much. You're ready to go with the workloads. Nothing else needed for anyone else to do." And kind of how that looks when you kind of see it on the bigger VRO picture. So for people who love VRO, it's kind of fun. So this is kind of where we're just checking, can we see a server, right? So this is the first part. So this is, can we see that all the servers are available on the network? We get into our CSV file where we know where all the stores are. So that converts into JSON. We check which ones have completed. That's that flag that we talked about earlier on. Is it ready? Has it been built? So we remove any ones that we don't care about and just look for the ready ones. And then we start going through doing SSH from the VRO box out and do telnet out to the stores to see if we can reach them. And obviously we can do that multiple times per instance. Once we hit it once, if that store workflow build, it will do as many stores that are ready to go. Finally, this is kind of how once that bit's done, the second workflow is like how we build it. As you can see, we're kind of doing it in modules, right? So every little bit we talked about is its own little workflow. So you can kind of take that bit and use it somewhere else. Or you can investigate it, or if it fails, you can go and run the next bit yourself. So yeah, that's the idea, is that it's pretty modular so that it could be changed, if the environments change as well. And all the time, everything was around sending an email, error, success, etc. to tell the customer. So that's kind of what we did with VRO. And it's been successful. It took about 35 minutes to build a store, I think. I'm looking. Is that about right? Yeah. Once we sort of did this command. And that's only longer because we had all these little delays in there just to kind of make sure that the services were running properly before we continued. Challenges that we had. Sometimes human error. Do people cable things in the right way around that you expect? That can be it, really. Not too much inside of there, because obviously a very much hands-off process, right? So we're trying to minimize kind of human error approach. Mostly it was around just sort of some of the racking and stacking and cabling components of it. Hardware failures. So like I said earlier on, we are just looking for, when there are engineers in site, he's not looking to see if SX is booted. Quite the common one is the SD cards that's come out of the servers that we're using to boot ESX off. But nobody's going to see that because the ESX server's booted up and it's all green, but they've not got a console to see they've actually got ESX, and all it's doing is just spinning into a BIOS and going, I can't boot. They're not seeing that. We can see it once we've got an ILO up and running because we can log in, but yeah, that's quite common really. It was mostly during the deployment process, was the SD cards getting shifted out during the deployment process. Interoperability, I suppose we're talking about here is making sure that as we develop the tools that they all work, that obviously vSAN depends on a certain version of the HBA drivers, depending on the version there and the vCenters. So it's kind of make sure that all our bits and all our tooling kind of work together. Task times, so we talked about that quickly actually in the other bit earlier on, was just about how long things took to run. Sometimes, there's delays in. Scripts and users, I've kind of been through this anyway, but WinPE for the booting environment, and obviously the hardware command line tools were built into that to kind of do the command line tool, and we use the kickstart script technology to install the SXI. OEM tooling, so that's one, again, like the BIOS, firmware, those kind of things that we did initially, plus the ones where adding them into the hardware management tools, so they're using those kind of the pre-built scripts and APIs are open for those. And vSphere build-out, fully built on VRO, using out-of-the-box workflows and some extended functionality. And we had PSO engaged to help build it out, but we also extended out to the Center of Excellence team in Sophia. Don't know if anyone's ever heard of them. They're a very smart bunch of people who do a lot of VRO work and extensibility, a lot of it around VRA particularly. So if you're ever looking at VRA, reach out to your account team and ask them, not be able to help you out quickly and get things up and running and give you some time. Really good team. Lessons learned. Okay, so I think, if we go back and roll this back and think how could we do things better. So our resource element was that was what contained all our store data. It was a CSV file inside VRO, not exactly the most editable kind of technology. You've got to check it out, you've got to check in a new version. It's would have been better probably to have it as an external database. And we sort of developed it so far down the line, and because of the speed of the rollout, it was like we know that's a technology that works, let's use it. I suppose in a database, it would have meant other teams could have reported, we could have done more reporting out of it, status and status checking, etc. And I suppose the other bit as well was around, obviously the offline build we can't do, but the bit where we're doing it to hardware management, then doing to the VRO steps of the hardware management, adding it into the management tools. That would have been great if that was one big task, but it was quite separate. It was, one, the customer had their own team that had skills and knowledge around using those kind of vendor tools. And two, at the time, there wasn't any VRO workflow plugins for those products out of the box. So we'd have basically invented the wheel to try and add it into VRO. And it was, but a lot of extra time when the customer already knew how to do it one way, and we'd have to create a whole new lot of work to do it. So it was kind of like, it would have been great, but I think as we go, I think that's it. We would have stopped the sort of handover process between teams. So day 2 stuff. So we were looking at, so obviously you've got a large environment. One of the things now is how do you maintain it? How do you patch it? That's quite a big day 2 challenge, software and hardware. So again, we're looking at how we can use VRO. One of the challenges is that when you have Robo, you don't get DRS as part of the SKU. DRS, it's used, but it's also used by vSphere Update Manager. So when you put a host in, remediate, and it puts a host in maintenance mode, it's actually using DRS to move the VMs. So if you don't have that, you've manually got to move the VMs before you can put a host in maintenance mode. So we're kind of working with that, and we're also working with inside VMware to see how that can be addressed as well, because we've realized, VMware realized it's a big challenge for customers, and we shouldn't be inventing the wheel. And we've already got a technology that works really well. Can we not have some functionality around that product, even if it's not the full DRS suite? Let's see what's available and what we can do. Hardware patching. What can we do around here? Again, can we automate it? I know we originally started talking about things like, I don't know if you heard of Redfish, kind of open source hardware management tool, so we can be hardware independent of how we do our hardware patching. I think the final bit is application deployment, and this is where VMware, again, customers sort of having to invent a bit of a wheel when we think we should have the technology to do it. Content libraries aren't really the answer for distributing the content like this, especially big VMs, because when you put something in a content library, even if it's an OVF, we expand it out, and then so you've got to copy the whole VM rather than a small OVF. So, so that kind of application deployment at speed, because when you've got to go to 3,000 stores and you've got a Windows image, it's quite big. It takes a long time to do, because you can't do 1,000 stores at one time, because you've got limitations on your network inside the data center and as you go out as well. So I think customers have been looking at their solutions, and VMware are trying to look at alternatives as well. I'll invite Rishi back just on stage, talk about where they are now, what they're looking at around the stores and some of the stuff in the data center.
Yeah, won't take a long time. Thanks for that. So, as we say, the automation is already in place. We started deploying stores. And now, after a year, completing the automation process. We are at 1,000 stores. And it might be contradicting. You might be thinking of the slide says, okay, deploying 300 vSAN environment in just 2 weeks, and down the line it's 1 year and you're only 1,000. What's happening? What's wrong? So it's not because we are doing anything wrong. It's about add-on delays that happens because we have to have the, as we still said, the operating system has to be pushed onto the hardware before it's being shipped onto the premise, on the store premise. So the limitation of the space where we can stack up the servers, the limitation for the vendors to provide the hardware at the right time on these kinds of bulk orders. Also, we are doing refurbishments in stores to accommodate the networks so that the 10 gig links can go in to have the vSAN environment in place. So multiple challenges and delays causing our operations to get this rollout at a massive scale. But still, we are doing well, and 1,000 stores are now fully operational on a 3-node vSAN cluster. Then extending service, so that's one of the challenges. We have to move into more challenging technologies to support our customers. So one of the things we are looking for is how we can enable containers, use of containers into the stores rather than and replacing the existing virtual machines, which are legacy kind of things. So those kinds of things which helps and benefit end of the day to the customers as well. So that's what we are looking at. Also, we have started upgrading our environment into 6.7, which basically gives more flexibility on user interface level, to be fair. The web client, you guys might be knowing, it's not doing well, 6.0, 6.5 both. So 6.7, we have trialed that, and it's very good. Update 1 has released as well, so it's very fast, no more crashes and all those things. Only thing is I have to update the new command line pack if you're doing some PowerShell things, that's all. But it's a good thing we are looking at, and the rollout is happening at the moment. So vSAN in data center, do you want to walk through vSAN data center?
I can quickly talk about it.
Yeah.
So obviously successful in stores. Simon normally does a bit, I can quickly talk. So obviously they're now looking at how they can use it in the data center. It's been investigated, maybe not quite with the VVD, but kind of following that design methodology of how that's built. They've got their own designs. So we're looking at that, how they can modernize the data center, can sort of reduce it. We're also looking at other environments, customer fulfillment centers, where there's a few more challenges around the kind of database technology that's in use. So yeah, we're trying to, the customer's growing the use of vSAN in the data center for different projects where it's applicable to the business needs. You've got to justify where it sits. So yeah, that's kind of what we did. So visit the HI zone in Solutions Exchange. There's an espresso bar. It's got to find better coffee than out there. I've got to go and find it, I think. There's daily prizes. This is Simon, so we're talking about different hardware. Yeah, so going to have a look. Have a look around the Solutions Exchange if you've not been. Pick up as much free swag as possible. Thank you very much.